Supermicro surged over 30% last week after announcing a multi-billion-dollar deal with a Saudi data center operator. However, some analysts are still cautious on this tech stock based on its falling profit margins. So, is now the right time to add SMCI to your portfolio, or should you wait a little longer? In this video, I'm going to cover the latest details with Supermicro and see if this stock is ready to buy. Supermicro rose 19% in midday trading last Wednesday, adding to Tuesday's 16% gain after announcing a multi-billion-dollar deal with a Saudi data center operator. The rally comes on the heels of a bullish coverage initiation by Raymond James, which is betting big on the company's role in the AI hardware race. Raymond James Financial initiated coverage of SMCI stock with an outperform rating and set a $41 price target, reflecting further upside from last Tuesday's close. The firm noted SMCI's strategic positioning in the $145 billion AI infrastructure market, where it currently holds a 9% market share. SMCI stock has climbed nearly 50% in 2025, far outperforming the S&P 500 index. The latest rally was triggered by a $20 billion agreement with DataVault, a Saudi Arabian data center company, announced last Tuesday. Supermicro's partners Nvidia and AMD also moved higher last week after unveiling separate AI collaborations with Humane, an AI subsidiary of Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund. SMCI's product lineup, which includes GPU-dense servers and liquid cooling systems, has made it a key supplier in the AI gold rush. With firms like Nvidia and AMD depending on scalable hardware solutions, SMCI's ability to rapidly customize and ship high-performance computing systems currently gives it a competitive edge. Raymond James emphasized SMCI's nimble and vertically integrated model as a major reason for its optimism. The firm expects the AI infrastructure segment to remain in hot demand throughout 2025 and beyond, which could directly benefit SMCI's top and bottom lines in future quarters. SMCI's Tuesday rally not only put it among the top market performers, but also highlights growing investor appetite for AI hardware suppliers. While many pure AI stocks have struggled in 2025, SMCI's diversified revenue model and exposure to essential infrastructure gives it a unique advantage. However, while the stock price action was super strong last week, SMCI's recent financial performance does offer doubts for some investors. For example, net income for the third quarter ending March 31st, 2025 fell 73% year over year, coming in at $108 million, down from $402 million. In contrast, net sales increased 19% year over year, reaching $4.59 billion, up from $3.85 billion in Q3 2024. Now, another key metric investors should consider when looking at a stock is its gross profit margin. Margin tells you how much of every dollar of revenue is left after costs of goods sold to help the business cover its overheads and other operating expenses. A low gross margin is okay if a company sells in large volume, but it's not easy to maintain a healthy business. In Supermicro's case, gross profit margins have been trending down for over a year. This is a problem because while the company is growing its top line, it isn't necessarily making progress towards profitability. On face value, the company's most recent earnings report showed an impressive increase in net sales of 19% year over year, reaching $4.6 billion. These strong sales were based off its strong demand for its storage and server solutions. However, a closer look at the numbers reveals SMCI's gross profit actually declined to $440 million, a worrying decrease of 26%. The reason for this large loss in gross profit comes down to the company's gross profit margin falling considerably from more than 15% to less than 10%. Consequently, increase in revenue was more than offset by a decreasing margin, and Supermicro earnings are also going in the wrong direction. This past quarter, quarterly net income totaled less than $108 million, its lowest level since 2023. Whilst earnings can fluctuate from one period to the next, it is a troubling trend for the business and may turn off investors. The danger is if companies' profits don't improve, that could make it a more expensive buy, and that could be the case if it isn't able to strengthen its gross margins. The company is forecasting diluted EPS of 30 to 40 cents for the current June quarter. Now, if that were to hold up for the entire year at the top of that range, the company would post an EPS of $1.60. And based on a share price of $45, which was around last Thursday's closing price, that would mean it's trading around 28 times its future earnings. However, this projection does assume that spending on servers, data centers, and tech infrastructure remains strong, which is not guaranteed given the current macroeconomic conditions. So, overall, what does all this mean for investors and traders alike? In the past 12 months, Supermicro shares have fallen close to 60% and look like they're now on the rise after finding support at the significant low of $17 back in November 2024. Looking from a technical perspective, the chart looks bullish with SMCI trending upwards. And currently there is a short to medium term trading opportunity with a clear price target of $66. However, from a fundamental point of view, SMCI's profit margins remain slim, and this may be a concern for some long-term investors. With such tight margins, any sales growth it generates may not necessarily translate into a big improvement on its bottom line. And based on this important fundamental metric, some investors may want to wait for the next earnings report to provide more clarity on longer-term growth prospects of this company. Supermicro Computers jumped 19% this week so far, based on a deal it's done with a Saudi Arabia company. So in this video, I want to unpack the potential trading opportunity available for SMCI. Let's take a look. Now, before we start, if you find value in my analysis of Supermicro or other stocks, you may also find value in my trading tips email newsletter. I'll leave a link in the description below. If you sign up, I'll send you high quality trading tips that have already helped hundreds of my students become better traders in just 30 days. Check it out. So SMCI has jumped almost 20% this week so far. With the news announcement, it's done a deal with a company in Saudi Arabia. According to an article by Guru Focus, SMCI rose 19% in midday trading on Wednesday, adding to Tuesday's 16% gain after announcing a multi-billion-dollar deal with a Saudi Arabia data center operator. The stock has climbed nearly 50% in 2025, far outperforming the S&P. And the latest rally, it says, was triggered by this $20 billion agreement with a company called DataVault, a Saudi Arabian data center company. So this is great news for SMCI and has sent the stock surging. Let's take a look. So you can see on screen, I've got the weekly chart for SMCI. And we can see since this significant low back in November 2024, the stock has been trending upwards. It created a peak in February 2025 at around $66 before it's fallen into this low recently of around about $28, and it's looking to move up from here. And you can see on screen I have drawn a trend line, and it shows that the price is coming back to test this on a few occasions before finding support and pushing off. Particularly this week with this deal with the Saudi company, it has moved up around 20%. It's looking very bullish. So if you are looking to trade Supermicro, what sort of opportunity is available for you? Let's mark up the chart with a few lines and look at the key price levels which might offer resistance as the price starts to move upwards. So the first level I've marked up is $35, which corresponds to this price peak back in August 2023. And we can see at the moment price did consolidate sideways slightly in the last few weeks, but now after this deal it has broken well above this price level. Second price level I've marked up on the chart is $50. And we can see that when Supermicro fell from this significant high here of 122, it did fall into this area of $35 before having a rally in the other direction, meeting resistance around about $50 before falling away again. So let's mark that one up. Next level I've marked is 66, which corresponds to the most recent price peak in February this year. So this is where SMCI found some resistance before falling back towards this trend line. I've also marked up $100, which is always a round psychological number for investors and traders, a price level where people often come in. And this also is reflected in the chart around about this level here and these two levels here. So it has offered short-term resistance in the past. And the final level I've marked up here is 122, which corresponds to SMCI's all-time high. So now, if we look at the weekly chart with these key levels marked up, we can see where Supermicro is in relation to these levels. So we can see this week with this news announcement, price has taken off significantly. It's pushed through this level of $35 and is still under this next level of $50. So if you were to take a possible trade on this stock over the next few months, what could that look like? Now, based on the price action, you could use $35 as your entry trigger, which means that based on this week's price action so far, you could potentially take an entry this week or next week. And entering at this level would mean that the next level of possible resistance would be this $50 level, which would give you a potential upside of around 39%, with your stop loss set around 15%, corresponding to this price action here, the lows created here and here. So this initial trade would give you a risk to reward ratio of 2.69. And if it does break through this level here of $50, the next possible level of resistance would be the $66 level, corresponding to the peak here. And if price moved up to this point, it would give you an upside of 84% with a risk reward of 5.89. Following this, if SMCI continues to move up over the medium to long term, then the next level would be around $100, offering a really big reward of 180%. And best case scenario, if price keeps going from there and targets the all-time high, then on offer is around 240% upside. So a really good opportunity for SMCI if price can push through all these levels of resistance over the next months and possibly years. Now, because this week has been such a big move, it may be wise to wait for the price to close this week and also see what price does next week. Let's see if there's any selling pressure. We can see straight away that the stock is looking bullish. It looks as if this line here is a significant level of support with the trend line moving upwards. It's broken through $35 and it's sitting under 50. Now, if you're a bit more risk averse in terms of your trading rules, you may wish for price to break through the psychological level of $50 before entering. So over the next few weeks, we might see SMCI do this. It might break through the $50 level, maybe this week, maybe next week. It might take a few weeks to do that. This week price might close high in the high 40s, and then maybe next week there'll be a slight pullback to test what the sellers have got. I think then if price does pull back in the next few weeks and breaks the peak created by the upward move, that would give you a bit more confirmation. And you may wish for price to pull back to 50 and actually break 66, this peak over here, for more confirmation that price is moving up. And this would be a more conservative entry. And let me give you a third option, which is probably medium risk. In this third scenario, we can use this week's price peak as our entry point and wait for a pullback over the next few weeks. If we get a pullback next week, we can use this peak here as our entry point. However, if next week is also bullish, we can use that peak for the entry marker. So let's say, for example, in this scenario, this is the closing bar for the week. We would then mark up the price peak for the overall week, and that would be our entry point. And then we could expect a down bar next week. So if price moves up to this peak this week, takes a breather next week, perhaps comes back to test 38 or 37, and then breaks the week after, either breaking this level here or breaking this level of 50, that would constitute a good entry point. So if you were to take an entry above this week's peak when it closes, you would have potential upside of 42% to this next level here of $66, and then an upside potential of 115 to the $100 round level. Following that, you've got 163 up until the all-time high. So whichever entry you consider, there's lots of upside potential with Supermicro Computer. And based on my own trading experience and style, I think this is the entry I would be looking at. Wherever price closes this week, I'd be looking at that exact price peak and then watching what price does next week. If we get a down bar next week, or maybe for 2 weeks in a row, and then price finds support, it falls over the next 2 weeks, no more than 50%, so it's strong, and then moves up to take out the potential peak of this week, that would give me more confidence that it is trending upwards, and that would give a safe entry with relatively high risk reward ratio. Don't forget, if you come in at this point here, you could set an initial stop loss of 15%, and you've got an upside potential around about 163%, which gives you an overall risk reward ratio of over 10. It's a really good trading opportunity. Even if price finds resistance at the $66 level, you've still got an upside of 40%. So still a great trade with a risk reward of 2.78. However you look at it, SMCI is looking bullish, and it does present a good opportunity. Let me know what you think. Would you take this trade? What are your rules? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thanks for watching.